Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. Hey, lovers of small business and good stories in general. Welcome to today's episode of Small Business War Stories. And this week we're doing a special burst of episodes with people who are forum leaders who lead different small business forums and who have a lot of different expertise areas and areas that are interesting to small businesses. So today I had the chance to sit down with Dave Hamilton, and he has lots of good stories. He goes by Dave the Nerd, and he is a really interesting guy who has had a lot of experience with small business. So this week we'll get back to our regular stories, our Wednesday episodes next week. But this week we're going to publish 4 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday 4 episodes. And today's episode is a flash episode of Small Business War Stories, and it is brought to you by Proven. Proven.com is a hiring tool for small businesses. We have thousands of customers. It's a company I started, so I'm biased. But it is a great way for you to hire for your small business. And we have a blog at blog.proven.com that is an excellent resource for small businesses. So check it out. And without further ado, let's get into today's flash episode of Small Business War Stories with Dave Hamilton. And we are live here with Dave Hamilton and Small Business War Stories. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thanks for having me, Pablo. This is great to be here.
Yeah, it's cool to have you here, and you have quite a very, very interesting story, and I'd love to get into it a little bit more. But you're currently in New Hampshire, is that right?
I am currently in New Hampshire. Yeah, I've been here for almost 13 years.
Wow, where were you before that?
I grew up in Connecticut, southern Connecticut, so really just a suburb of Manhattan, really. And then lived in Austin, Texas for a little while.
Okay, that's where I am.
Back to Connecticut, so there you go. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. So let's talk a little bit. I found you because you have a couple of really interesting things going on with small businesses. One of them is called the Small Business Show, which you say you do small business advice for new and existing business owners, and you also have a Facebook group where you help small businesses connect. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Small Business Support Group. That's right. That's what we call it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit. What came first, the support group or the show?
The podcast came first. It's I co-host a show with a longtime business partner of mine named Shannon Jean, and we've had various different businesses together over really almost the last 2 decades.
Okay.
And didn't really have anything going. And Shannon had the idea that I've been podcasting for 13 years. And he had the idea for the show and said, "Oh, this would be a great thing. We could do a business together again." And so that's sort of where the genesis of the show came from. And we decided there were a lot of shows out there sort of romanticizing the startup culture, right? Where you're out there, you get funding, and the goal is to exit, relatively quickly. At least that's the romantic notion of it.
Right.
And there weren't enough shows, we felt, targeting the people that are doing it every day, slogging it out, building either lifestyle businesses or cash flow businesses, that kind of thing, where you actually have to bring in revenue and turn a profit and responsible for all that kind of stuff. So that's that's the kind of businesses that Shannon has always run. It's the kind of businesses I've always run. So we thought, let's do it, and we've been having a blast. We've been doing it about 3 years. So.
Very cool. That's what I focus on with Small Business War Stories as well. So
right.
Kindred soul.
Right. Kindred spirits for sure.
Sounds good. So tell me, what kind of businesses have you run?
Well, I mean, all kinds. For the last 20 years, I have, 20 years ago, we started a website called Mac Observer, where we publish news and reviews and podcasts now about anything relating to Apple and what they're up to and that sort of thing. And we've been doing that for 20 years. And then from that, we were about a year in, and the first full-time hire I made, so I started it with a partner, right? And Brian Chaffin. And anytime you start a business with a partner, my advice is, figure out who's going to do what, and if there's a lot of overlap, then you don't need to be partners.
Right.
But which worked out for Brian and I. He wanted to do the editorial side. He wanted me to do and what I like to do, sort of the tech side as well as the business side. Remember, 20 years ago, DreamHost and Squarespace didn't exist. So if you wanted to launch a website, you kind of needed to have somebody that knew how to make that happen.
Right. You needed to have a server in a closet.
You needed to find a server somewhere. That's right. Yeah. So I did that, but also I was responsible for, bringing in the revenue. And I had some, experience selling various different things over the years. So I was like, that's fine. But what I realized very quickly was that sales needed to be a full-time job, because if you're doing sales and you make 20 phone calls, or even if you make 200 phone calls, right, and 199 of them are no's, that's a successful day, right? You got a sale.
Right.
The problem is it's an activity rooted in negativity, and I'll speak for myself. If I have 3 other things on my plate, like building our own custom content management system, because 20 years ago WordPress didn't exist either, and getting the server running and tweaking the way the website looks, like that's instant productivity. I know that if I put work in, something's going to come out of it. And so sales tended to not be the thing. I'd spend maybe half a day on sales and be like, well, I want to do something and feel productive today, so I'd move on. But of course, that doesn't bring money in. So our first full-time hire was a sales rep. We realized that sales needed to be a full-time job. And very quickly after we did that, we had a bunch of our competitors come to us and say, hey, will you do for us what you've done for you? These days, that means basically, sponsorship sales. But back then, it also meant server hosting and kind of all those other difficult things at the time. So we spun off a business called Backbeat Media that sells all of our sponsorships, both for our, the display ads on the site, as well as for the podcast. And we do that for a bunch of other folks in the Apple market and beyond.
That's really cool. So I want to get back to that idea that's really powerful, what you just said about sales being a full-time job, because focusing on, when you run a small business, like you said, there's a million things going on. You and I have both had the experience. I've been running Proven for almost 9 years now.
Okay.
There are always competing priorities, and I've done plenty of sales for my company, but you're right, there's always something else. So is that something that you see a lot in the small businesses that you've spoken to and the business that you come across? What are some of the challenges that people deal with this idea of sales being a full-time job, and how do you usually address that? How do you kind of help people?
Yeah, it is. It doesn't have to be a full-time job, but you have to be very disciplined at it, right? And making it one person's full-time job is a way to sort of compartmentalize that discipline. Because if that's the only thing that person's supposed to do, it's very easy to look and say, did you create results? And then, that's very easy to see. Whereas, like you said, when you've got 80 other things that you can do, and every one of them is justifiable and results driven and all of that stuff, it's easy for any one of them, sales included, to be overlooked. So yeah, we do encounter people that sort of have that issue, but you have to solve that problem very, very quickly if you are in a non-funded business. If you are a cash flow, like bootstrapped company, you're going to solve that problem real quickly. Otherwise, you don't have a company. So
right. No, that's a good point. And how did you think about when you hired that first salesperson? Sorry. Let's go back to that. How did you think about that? How did you find the right person? How did you figure out how to pay them? Because that's a big thing too, is compensation schemes, and how do you set that up successfully?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something I haven't thought about in a while. It was like most of the things that I have done to be successful. It was not entirely my idea. I not to discount any of these ideas because they're good. But I always say, if you want an idea to be worth $100, write it on a $100 bill. Right? Ideas are only worth anything if they are executed, and generally if they're executed well. So one of our clients was was a company called MacTel that doesn't exist anymore. They had to go Chapter 11 because they were a Mac clone vendor, and Apple closed out the cloning business back then. And the CEO and I of that company were having lunch, and he said to me, he's like, you should hire my marketing guy, Greg, as a sales rep for you. And I thought, oh, that's kind of a crazy idea. Of course, then as I was driving home from lunch, I thought, no. It is a crazy idea, but it's a good crazy idea. Like, this guy is the right guy because he's been on the other side of this. He's been pitched over and over and over again. He's bought ads. He bought ads from us. He knows this business from a slightly different perspective, and he might be a really good person to do this. And so he actually wound up becoming my co-founder at Backbeat Media. Eventually, but when we brought him on to Mac Observer, we didn't have a lot of free cash flow at the time. We were less than a year old, and so we paid him 100% commission, which worked out. It was fine. I'm not sure. There's pros and cons to that, honestly.
What do you mean by 100% commission? Exactly. What were you paying him?
Oh, so we were paying him, I think at the time we paid him 25% of anything that he brought in, which in this day and age is too much. And it might have been too much in that day and age, but it was okay because it was worth it. He came on board. He really turned things around for us. Just having that full-time person and having the right full-time person was stellar. But I would say to anybody that's certainly in our business of ad sales, you want to keep your cost of sale somewhere between 13 and 18%. However you get there, it could be a base plus commission or full commission or whatever it is. The 13 to 18% number is where money's actually where you're not losing money. So yeah.
Got it. So
and hopefully making some.
Right. And it also depends on the margins that you make on the product. You mean 13
exactly.
to 18% of your margin.
Yeah, 18% of the gross. Yeah, exactly. No, not 18% of the margin. 13 to 18% of the gross. Like 15 is kind of the number, and it can move a little bit up and down.
Well, hold on. What gross margins does that assume for the product you're selling?
In terms of, like I said, in the ad sales or sponsorship sales business, that's generally where that falls in order to, in order to have enough left over to, pay for your infrastructure. I mean, if that's your only revenue for the company, or if that's a main source of revenue, it's going to support everything. So you can't carve off too much of it to as the cost of the sale. Otherwise, you're
right.
You don't have
so
anything
what?
left.
So you're talking about a pure ad, so 100% margin product. Because if you're selling
margin product, correct?
Right.
Yes. There's no. Well, I mean, there's costs in terms of bandwidth and things like that. But you're right.
That's what I was asking, because if their listeners are selling other products and you're doing 13 to 18% of the gross, but you're only doing 50% gross margins, that would be more like 6.5% to 9% that you.
Yes, right. Yeah, if you're selling a physical product that you have to have manufactured and that sort of thing, then absolutely, the numbers change.
Okay,
for sure.
Cool. Yep. Yeah, no, thank you. I wanted to ask you about that because that's a really interesting insight that you had there about the, kind of being dedicated to full-time sales, and it's something that a lot of small business people struggle with is, do I pay somebody and how do I structure their pay, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's, I mean, even... that wasn't my first business, but so if I've been running businesses for 25 plus years, I still struggle with that sometimes. How do I structure a payment, plan for someone that obviously is fair to both sides, but incentivizes them and all of that stuff? It's more art than science sometimes, I think, and it's one of the challenges that constantly presents itself.
Cool. Yeah. So let's talk about your show a little bit.
Sure.
How do you find your guests? Who are your guests, and what format do you follow? How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so we certainly have guests on the show. Guests are a part of what we do. I would say that if I did the math, it'd probably come out to about 50% of our episodes are episodes that are focused on a guest, and then the other 50% are, Shannon and I taking a topic and sort of digging into it. Like we just did tools that you can use at your small business and the things that really work well for us. We did another one about managing vendor relationships, like just really nitpicking into these things and either talking from experience or pulling from different sources. In terms of finding guests, we either pull people that we know, which is of course the easiest thing to do, or Shannon has actually spent some time in some Reddit groups and found some very interesting guests for us, some small business focused Reddit groups that have some interesting people, and we brought them on the show, and it's worked out pretty well.
Very cool. What's your favorite Reddit for small business?
You would have to ask Shannon that. I am not a Redditor, so it's not really a place that I live these days. So
sounds good. So tell us a little bit about the forum that you have on Facebook. So how do people find it? What's the name of it?
Yeah, it's the Small Business Support Group, and we always tell people, because Facebook's URLs are too complex, we always tell people go to our site, businessshow.co/Facebook, and that'll bring you right to the Small Business Support Group.
Got it. So how do people use the forum? Like what kind of interactions do you see people having there?
Yeah, so we started the forum because I had good success. I have another podcast, one that I started almost 13 years ago, called Mac Geek Gab, where we answer people's questions. It's hosted at the Mac Observer. We answer people's questions and solve their problems. It's, for those of you that are old enough to understand the reference, it's car talk for Apple geeks is really what it comes out to be. And kids, ask your parents. But yeah, just a Q&A show, and a Facebook group sort of sprung up from that, and we created it, and then it really took hold. And we've always had listener interaction on the Small Business Show, and so we decided, oh, wait a minute, let's take something that we know has worked here and see if we can apply it. So we refer people, we mention it in every episode of the podcast. We link to it from the website. We, and we invite people to it all the time. And it really is that support group where people can come in and say, hey, I just started a business, or I have a business going and I have this thing. And sometimes it's just, I need a place to vent, and that's fine. And other times it's, hey, I'm having trouble getting this kind of thing set up. How have other people done it? And people will chime in, and it's actually turning into a really great community of folks, which I love.
That is awesome. Yeah, I am joining the group here as we speak.
Awesome.
What is the number one lesson that you have learned in your time as a business person, either through running your own businesses or through the show or the forum?
Yeah, make a decision and act on it. Don't delay. Like if I could go back and give myself advice either 20 minutes ago or 20 years ago, it would be the same thing. Just don't deliberate too much. Just make a decision and go. You can always kind of adjust as you go, but not making a decision and therefore not taking action is often the thing that kills. I always say time kills all deals. But time kills all businesses, too, if you don't evolve and do anything with them. So making decisions, making changes, and then tweaking as you go is really the best advice I could give myself, and therefore could give anybody. That's the lesson I keep learning.
That makes sense, yeah, because even if you make the wrong decision, at least you have data about what not to do, which enables you to make a different decision, right?
You're not going to do that again. So that's great. You learned something. It's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And I saw before we close out, I saw you're also interested in music, right? You play the drums, is that right?
I do. That's right. Yeah.
That's awesome. I play a little blues guitar myself. So.
Oh, very nice. Do you still play regularly?
Yeah. I just released my first EP, and I play as Oso Diablo. That's OSODIABLO. And I live in Austin, Texas, so there, as you know, quite a few opportunities to pursue that here.
Oh, very cool. Backbeat and Backbeat Media and Mac Observer were both started in Austin, and I try to get back there at least a couple times a year. So I'll look you up when I come
Absolutely.
into town.
Yeah, drinks and tacos on me. So be sure to hit me up.
Done.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. Are there any other addresses or anything? So the name of your show is the Small Business Show. Is it available on iTunes and things like that?
Of course. Yep. And you can always find us at businessshow.co. So there you go.
Got it. And then businessshow.co/Facebook is how you find your small business support group where you can connect with other small business owners.
You got it. You got
Perfect. Well, Dave, thank you so much for taking the time today to sit down with us here at Small Business War Stories. Always great to meet somebody else who's a kindred soul, who's also interested in the stories and the trials and tribulations of being a small business owner. So I appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. This has been a blast.
All right, Dave, take care. Thank you for listening to Small Business War Stories. If you enjoy the show, share it with a friend, or you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our blog at blog.proven.com. If you have an idea for us, we'd love to hear it. Please email us at podcast@proven.com. See you next time. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.